Can you share some insights into the evolving cybersecurity threat landscape? That critical infrastructure providers, and the definition of which has changed significantly, as you well know, over the last couple of years. What are they facing? And what have you seen in your role, your unique? What changes have you seen in the last 12 months? Over to you.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me today here. So, yeah, cyber threat landscape is continuously evolving. And the challenge of this threat landscape evolving is because our perimeter has also changed. We are no longer working behind the company firewall in the same building. Now the employee are working from home, and on top of it, we have our contractor who is supporting our business. We have IT and OT devices connected to our network. We have the sensors connecting to it. We have the SaaS application, the mobile handphones, So the perimeter has become now perimeterless. The whole perimeter is really expanded. That's also giving a lot of challenge in terms of the threat actors are taking advantage of. So threat actors are no longer just targeting the firewalls and the VPN infrastructure, which is hosting for the organization. Now they are targeting individuals because they know that individual is working from home and it is much easier to target those identity-based attack. And we have been seeing almost 200% increase on identity-based attack using the phishing and a password spray mechanism. So that's number one threat. Phishing and password spray is continuously increasing. The technique still remains the same, but they are changing the lure. What I mean by that is these attackers are now taking advantage of various global news. For example, pandemic has hit. So they started sending messages that there's a lockdown happening and people get carried away and they click on the link. They change the technique saying that vaccination is available, or this is the latest news from WHO. So they are following the pattern of various news happening around the world and targeting the individuals. So vector, still the same, phishing, password spray, but the lure is changing. The second most biggest threat landscape we are seeing uprise is ransomware. Ransomware has been around, but all of a sudden now the ransomware is no longer a commodity-based ransomware targeting a click and forget kind of a user. They have changed the technique. Now we call it a human-operated ransomware. And we saw the example of SolarWinds. We saw the example of Colonial Pipeline. We saw the example of JB Meat Company. We saw the example of another beverage company in globally. All these attacks were highly targeted, and we call it human-operated ransomware, where these attacker groups are now spending lots of time hands-on keyboard, doing lots of research about that company. And as you know, typically we have seen a typical organization which attacker is usually within the company for 30 to 90 days to even 100 days. That's a normal maiden time it requires to detect that attacker is already inside your network. And these are the techniques, we call it a human-operated ransomware, right? The next one we see is attack happening on IT and OT environment. As you know, that 2 billion devices are every year we are seeing growing further and further on IT and OT side. Now it's no longer Internet of Things or it's now Internet of everything. Everything is connected to Internet. So we are seeing a lot of target happening on the IT OT front as well. Especially now they are on the flat network, and there is a need of micro segmentation on that environment. And we keep talking about zero trust as a concept, but all separate discussion on that. Next one we see, apart from phishing, identity-based attack, ransomware, IT OT, we are also seeing an increased mobile vector attack. We call it smishing and wishing. So I speak to every alternate day. Some or other customer says, Abbas, what can we do to avoid this kind of SMS? Even personally, every day I get at least one SMS saying that your DHL courier is here. Click on the link. Well, I never order anything from DHL, or I will get a call from somebody, unknown number, saying asking me for the personal detail. So we are seeing identity ransomware, human operated ransomware, and smishing and wishing as well being targeted as a threat. So just from what I told you in the last 5 minutes, you can see the spectrum of changes. Attack vectors are so advanced, so much of change. It's not one person behind the targeted attack. It's a whole nation state attack vector, as we call it. So it's really, really challenging how And I really feel for our security and operation team who has to combat against this ever-changing threat landscape, I would say. Over to you, Mike. You're on mute.
Thank you. Yes, I knew that was going to happen at least once in this session. So what I heard from you there was essentially the scale of the attacks, the personalization of the attacks. Vectors haven't necessarily changed, but what we're finding is there's an exploitation occurring at an individual level. Everyone has been living in a very challenging, different, compromised sort of fashion. And so the avenues, the vectors are still there, but the scale of the attacks has significantly increased. And essentially, critical infrastructure providers, by very definition, need to have a quite intimate relationship with their customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we finding? And let me just with a follow-up question: using health or government services or transportation, any industry you consider relevant?
Yep, absolutely. So I would say the number one target industry, according to Microsoft Threat Intelligence, is the education industry. That's the number one targeted industry, followed by FSI, financial industry or insurance companies, and critical infrastructures and transportation. They all follow. But interesting to know, and you'll be surprised. I mean, healthcare also is among the top 5. We typically see healthcare is not targeted, but last report which Microsoft released as a part of our threat intelligence, we call Digital Defense Report, which we released in last year September. Specifically, we highlighted that healthcare organizations are also among the top 5 targeted industry, considering that they have the PII data, the health data. And again, the phishing example I gave you, they are targeting the not-for-profit organization who have very less focus on cybersecurity. Their focus is to protect human against the pandemic and all. These not-for-profit organizations have become a victim of these various phishing and malware attacks most recently.